Now, Mashaba is one of the 2 taxi passengers who died after Zuma's car rear-ended the minibus taxi they were traveling in February 2014. The trial proceeds with the other culpable homicide charge regarding the death of Phumzile Dube and negligent driving. Now, Zuma pleaded not guilty to the charge relating to Dube's death. This despite a 2014 inquest into her death, which found that Zuma was negligent and failed to conduct himself in a reasonable manner. Now, Zuma maintains he lost control of the vehicle after hitting a pool of water during heavy rainfall. For more on the story, we do cross to our reporter, Chrisleda Lewis, who is at the Randburg Magistrate's Court, where all the proceedings took place this morning. Chrisleda, good afternoon to you. Indeed, detail more with, of course, the 1 culpable homicide charge being dropped, of course, and this can certainly not be pleasing to the family of the deceased.
Well, that's right, Arabile. It was quite an about turn when the trial started this morning to hear from the state that they were withdrawing one of the culpable homicide charges against Duduzane Zuma. Of course, this relates to one of the deaths, and would know that the families have long been waiting for justice. It's been 5 years now, and they were hoping that the state would be able to proceed on both counts of culpable homicide. But the state says it believes that a precondition, even though you found a situation where Nanke Mashaba had been hospitalised after the accident, that there was a precondition that pathologists say had led to her death. Hence, the state says it believes it could not proceed on that count. And of course, Duduzane Zuma pleading not guilty to Phumzile Dube's death, as well as another charge of negligent driving. Of course, you'd know that in 2014, an inquest into the death of Phumzile Dube had basically found Duduzane Zuma to be negligent and reckless, but the state, of course, at this point is trying to push and ensure that Duduzane Zuma is found guilty on this particular aspect. I think of importance at this stage, Arabile, is that just before we came to the lunch break, the taxi driver who was behind the wheel of that minibus taxi when Duduzane Zuma's car had collided with it, had just completed his testimony in the witness box and basically gave details of that fateful day on the 1st of February 2014, where he says he was driving from Fourways to Johannesburg, and it had been raining quite slightly, and at some point it began to start raining heavily, and he had to slow down his vehicle. But he says, recounting what happened then, was that he just heard a loud impact on the minibus taxi and somewhat described losing consciousness, saying that he could not remember what had happened next, but only when he got out of the vehicle did he realize that there was some damage to his vehicle, and also gave an account of what he saw of Phumzile Dube's body, a deceased body, of course, lying outside of or hanging over the window. So that gave us some details of the accident scene itself. So what the state is basically trying to demonstrate at this stage is that on that particular day, as the taxi driver was behind that wheel, even though it may have been raining to a certain degree, what we heard from the taxi driver, Mr. Vusi Dlamini, is that his vision had not been impaired at that time. It wasn't raining so hard that that visibility was poor on the day itself. But what he did concede was that there had been quite a lot of water on the road at the time, and some of the storm water drainage systems, which clearly had not been working properly at the time, water had not been seeping through them. So he gave a detailed account of what he remembers that took place on that particular day, and describing to us the crime scene, I beg your pardon, the accident scene on that particular time of the day.
Yeah, well, Chrisleda, the question then becomes that, you do say that, of course, he details it as much as possible, but the devil is indeed in that detail. And some of the elements that perhaps may be missing here may be just how far away with regards to his following distance he may have been. He surely will tell you that he probably doesn't remember that. But is there more with regards to that? Is there perhaps more with regards to the case in terms of how long it will go on for, when exactly it continues and the like?
Well, Arabile, we know that the last witness is going to be called just after we return from the lunch break. There was no indication as to who that person is, but we do know it is the last witness for the day. But, you know, what the state, what the defense is trying to do in this particular instance is that we heard in previous testimony from a dealer principal from a Porsche, the luxury vehicle that Duduzane was driving on that particular day when he collided into the taxi, is that, the defense is trying to point out that there isn't enough safety measures on that particular Porsche for him to have tried to do something after hitting that pool of water. The defense is arguing, in a nutshell, and what we're expecting to hear over the next couple of days until Friday, is that Duduzane Zuma had no control after hitting a pool of water which he did not see much prior, so that basically, when he had hit that pool of water, the vehicle had aquaplaned and he had no control over the vehicle. But what the state is also arguing is that by bringing, for example, the taxi driver who was behind the wheel on that day, Mr. Vusi Dlamini, was for him to detail that at that particular time, it had not been raining so heavily that Mr. Duduzane Zuma would have lost control of his vehicle after he had hit that puddle of water. So I think we're expecting to hear quite a lot more of that testimony from the state, trying to prove that Duduzane Zuma may have had some control of his vehicle and could have avoided this particular accident, while the defense argues, on the other hand, that he had simply had no control over it while he hit that pool of water on that day.
Chrisleda, thank you so much for that. I'm pretty sure that Porsche will have something to say in that regard, a little bit more with regards to whether their vehicle can indeed have further traction control in times like those. But that's our very own Chrisleda Lewis at the Randburg Magistrates Court.